Well, hey everyone, thank you for joining us today. We wanted to do a more just intimate gathering to just talk about the legal industry. And we have Ryan McKean here from Connecticut with his firm, Connecticut Trial Firm, joining us as we really talk about some different things, technology innovation, get to know Ryan a little bit. And really this is a part of a new campaign that we're doing once a month, which is a fireside chat with someone in the legal industry, and just to learn more and see what different firms are doing. And ultimately, this is part of this quarter's campaign, which is Coffee with Case Status. Update your clients in the time it takes to drink your morning cup of coffee. So, Ryan, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Andy, and thank you for the entire Case Status team for this wonderful day, and I really appreciate it.
Well, we're going to jump right in. We're going to have a conversation at the end. We'll open it up for some questions. So, Ryan, just to start, and we're going to project. We're not this more intimate setting. We're not going to use a mic. We're just going to talk loudly. So, let us know if you can't hear us. But so, tell us a little bit about you. Did you come from a wealthy family of lawyers?
No, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, or go to a four-year school. My mom got her associates. My dad was in the military. And grew up very, very middle class. No cousins even went to college, and I was the first person to graduate and then go on to law school. I from even as early as sixth grade in my yearbook, I said I wanted to be a lawyer, and I think it comes from a real desire to help people.
What was impactful from your childhood that really you think about when you think about how you run your practice today?
I think the most impactful experience from my childhood that guides my law firm is being a paper boy. That was my thing, all right? I'm 12 years old and I've got a paper route and I've got to deliver papers to 40 people, rain, sleet, snow. We don't have all nice weather in Connecticut. It's a bit of a thing. And having to go out there and really interact with people, build connection on my route, that was the only way I could make more money, because the Journal Inquirer, which I delivered, paid me 9 cents a paper, which really, even then, to a 12-year-old was not very much. You get $2.80 for delivering 40 papers or something. And so I needed to live on tips if I wanted to get the video games that I wanted, or the baseball cards, or the bike, or the shoes, or whatever it is. And the only way to get tips was to build connection, was to communicate, was to make my clients happy. And that resulted in nice tips and Christmas bonuses and the like, which really helped me get a start in life.
Yeah. Can you think of any time where maybe you had an unhappy client back in your paperboy days?
No. I wish I had some story here, but really, it's I'm very proud. I had the route for about 4 years. Every single paper was on time. Every single paper was dry, and I never really had any complaints about missed papers. Again, it's a very low bar. I mean, basically, if they got a paper, they're happy. If they didn't get a paper, they're unhappy. And if you could talk to them about the weather, or their life, or their dog, or learn about them, then that was where you made your money.
Yeah. We talked previously about your father and being in telecommunications. How did having a father who was a bit more technologically driven or in the technology industry kind of affect your upbringing?
It affected it tremendously. He's a real inspiration to me. He served in Korea, and he served doing telecommunications for the Army and networks for the Army. And again, this is in the 1970s, so you're talking at the very beginning of this, right? And so when he comes back from Korea, he gets into network technology, and he ends up working for Casual Corner and then Brooks Brothers as they get bought out, doing basically when people would buy things in the store in the mall, data had to go back to central office, and that was his job of making sure data was coming back, sales, all the information at the end of the day. And at that time, it was all done through phone. It was all done through that. And so my dad, there was no problem in the world that my dad didn't first think to a tech solution for. And so he was always buying, I remember one time I was a kid, and he had, he was building his own computer, and he had all these things, and he had to get this switch thing, which was a button so he could turn on like all of his components at once. It was like, it had like 6 manual buttons up the side, and one was for monitor, one was for PC, one was for printer. But that, he wanted it so he could just hit one button. And I often think about that, and I think I take that approach to my law firm, which is like one of the first questions I ask is, can we solve this challenge, this opportunity with a technical solution?
Yeah, that's cool. When you, as you continue to grow up, what was the kind of, I know you said you always wanted to be a lawyer. I'm sure there were a lot of paths that you could have taken at that point. What was ultimately the last piece that just made you jump in and go to law school?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I went to high school wanting to be a history teacher. I had some great teachers growing up. I loved history, and I actually majored in U.S. history in college. And I remember talking to one of my high school history teachers, and he's like, Ryan, you're going to feel too constrained by teaching. And he's like, I love teachers, and I love teachers, so I'm not knocking it, but he's like, your energy, it's just not going to be a great fit for you. And, at the time, I was, right before I went to college, this is where it all sort of ties together. So with my paper route money, I saved up for a car. Like, that was my thing. So when I turned 16, I had
a lot of papers.
I had $3,000 in the bank, and I bought a 1986 Accord LXI hatchback. And that was like the greatest thing ever, right? And I got tinted windows, and I put in like the CD player, and that was it. Like, I had made it in this world. And so I had my car, and one day, it was right before I went to college, I picked up my now brother-in-law, my then girlfriend, now wife's brother, at his grandparents'. I was driving him home with my wife in the car, girlfriend at the time, and we got like T-boned out of nowhere. And my car in the moment was destroyed. Fortunately, we had like back, neck, all of those awful kinds of pains that one can get in a car accident, but we were by and large unharmed. And it's always like, and I remember going back out to the car when it was in the road, and I was like, man, if I was going like a half a mile an hour faster, like that's in my passenger store, and that's where my girlfriend was sitting, and like that could have rolled us. And I lost my car at that time because it was bent frame, totaled, and I was in pain, and then I guess this is like my life story. Like, the guy had Liberty Mutual insurance, which I think they destroyed my car, and now I just wanted to destroy them. And they didn't want to give me fair money for the car. I was like, wait a minute, I put in these tints, and I had the CD player, and they're like, no, your blue book value of your car is worth, this. And I was like, I'm in so much pain, but I was in college, and like getting PT was like out of network, and I couldn't really get it, and they didn't want to pay me because I wasn't actively treating, and I just found the whole process so unfair. And my mom was a legal secretary at the time, and when you're in a car accident, like, you start getting all these calls, like all these people start calling you and saying, I want a statement, I want this, and it was confusing, and I'm like laid up in pain. So we hired one of the lawyers my mom worked with, and he was just like, let me take care of this, and I just felt relief come over me at that time, and ultimately my case settled, and ultimately I used that money to buy an engagement ring for my wife, my girlfriend, and now my wife, and we've been married almost 20 years at this point. So that kind of all worked out, and then in sort of another bizarre twist. So I always wanted to represent people. I always wanted to represent individuals. Like, government work or corporate work was not ever going to be my thing. And the lawyer who was my car accident lawyer, my parents went in and did a real estate closing. They said, "Oh, Ryan's graduating law school," and the lawyer says, "Really?" He's like, "We need a lawyer." And so they interviewed me, and that became my first job in 2005. I passed the bar, started the next day. making $43,000 a year, representing anybody that came in the door, and learning a whole lot. And so that's how that all sort of ties together for me.
So being in more general practice at that time, how does that, all the different things you were doing really affect the way that you think about practice today?
Well, I think when you general practice, somebody once said to me, is like the ultimate specialty, where it's like you're juggling a lot of different things, and you've got to get I think about 90% competent in multiple areas, and then when you hit that ceiling, you know who to refer it out to, where you're like, hey, I'm in over my head, I think it's an experience like no other, where you're hustling, you're getting out to court, you're interacting with clients from day one as a lawyer, and you're figuring out how to grow your practice. And I'll never forget, I went to a CLE in law school, where it was taught by the Massachusetts bar, but we could go for free because we were law students. I'm like, great. And it was how to start and run your own practice. And the lawyer there said, look, I don't care if you're at a big firm or small firm or whatever. He's like, your number one job in this profession is to get clients and keep them. He's like, everything else stems from that. So he's like, if you get nothing out of this CLE, he's like, look at how the lawyers in the firm get clients. Look at those successful lawyers. And he's like, go out and obtain your clients and build your base of business. And so that's really what I did in the firm, even at a small firm, where it's like, I wasn't just taking work from the partners, I was growing my own work.
So now fast forwarding a little bit, you've written a number of books now. When did the writing really start for you?
The writing started out of necessity. My firm, I'm not going to name it, but you can even go on the website right now, my old firm, and it's a website out of 1994 still, and they were older. They were older, and I saw in 2005, 2006 that people couldn't find us online, or if they did find us, it was what is this? Even at that time, because the website was so lacking. And so what I decided to do was I asked them, I said, hey, can I start a blog? They had no idea what a blog was. And I was like, oh, what is it? I'm just going to write about legal stuff. Like, oh, sure. So the firm agreed to pay my $100 WordPress fee or whatever. And off I went playing around with WordPress. And I did it essentially because when people Googled me, I wanted some better than 1992 website about me, and I also was like, you know what? I was like, I need to somehow make some sort of name for myself, and I'm like, look, I graduated from a state college, I went to a tier 4 law school, I'm at a firm that nobody knows about. And I was like, well, maybe I could write for the Law Tribune in my local bar. But then I was like, they're not going to want to hear from me. I'm not upper crust. I'm not there. So I was like, I know. I will start my own Law Tribune. I will compete with them with a blog. And me as this little lawyer. And I just started writing. And my only threshold was is this interesting to me? And if it interested me, I could tell some story about it. And all of a sudden, I started getting millions of views, millions of clicks, and judges would see me. And I ended up making news and resulted in a Connecticut Supreme Court case based upon the analytics of I analyzed a candidate for Attorney General's qualifications, found out she was not qualified, resulted in a big brouhaha, and it just kind of blew me up in a way that otherwise wouldn't. So I think I think at my core, I love to teach and I love to share, which is why I tell people about case status. I'm like, hey, it's great, you should go. But that's sort of who I am. If I find something that I like or adds value to me, and I like to share it.
Yeah. Now you obviously have a very entrepreneurial story, very much a self-starter. Did you always know that you wanted to run your own firm?
I don't know that I always knew that. Because that seemed very scary to me. In my family, my mom worked as a legal secretary, a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked for Brooks Brothers. My uncles were auto mechanics and whatnot. The only entrepreneurial influence that I had was my grandfather, who ran a car dealership, he, like, growing up, like, he always had the most money. And I think it was like, and I was always like, wow, you really do want to own something. So I think it took me a long period of time to get the courage to make that leap and to go out on my own. And I, looking back on it, it's like I waited too long to do that. And I think what happened was the only reason I did it was I felt forced. Like, I felt like the firm I'm at's not going to be here in 10 years. And I don't want to be talking to them about adding things like case status and wasting my breath. And I need to be able to make these moves and do these things, because this was like 2012 when I went out on my own. And I feel like that was like the right moment where all the cloud-based services got good enough. All the all the software as a service got good enough. And I didn't need phones anymore. I could have RingCentral. Like, I didn't need email servers. I could use Google Apps for Business. Like, all of those things started happening, and really, like I always say, like the voice in my head, like, should I stay or should I go on this one, was Sam Glover from Lawyerist, and Sam's just like, this is all changing, and you got to get out there, and you got to basically be punk rock and do these things, and not listen to these people who don't understand the cloud and things like that. So. I think the honest answer to that question, the long way of getting there, is like, I don't think I knew it, but looking back, I think it was inevitable.
We've talked in the past about now, as we think about your team, you run a linear workflow. How do you really drive efficiency in your firm with your staff?
Well, I mean, the first thing to drive efficiency is giving your team the tools that they need to do the job. And if you aren't giving them best-in-class tools, if you aren't training them on those tools, if you aren't giving them feedback, like, well, that's going to, like, bottle up any efficiency you have. So it's, at our firm, it is constant training, constant improvement, and it is constant ownership of it, where it's like, if you are the paralegal and you see something in case status that needs to be changed, like, we have a Slack thread through it. And, like, even yesterday as I was flying, I landed in Atlanta, and one of the paralegals was like, hey, in the settlement phase, like, can we not send out updates as to, like, the no contact updates, because this is confusing for clients. And our client happiness coordinator, Brittany, if you watch this, like, she went in and changed it, and that problem was solved. So we encourage ownership of those tools, training on those tools. And also coupled with a real belief that work should be done by the first person who could possibly do it. And so if the work can be done by a virtual assistant, if the work can be done by a paralegal instead of a lawyer, like, that's where that work needs to be done. And also, if the work can be automated, it needs to be automated. It has to be automated. If we're repeating anything down the road, it's like, that has to be, that if it's repeatable, it has to be automated. We have to give consideration to the automation of things. And I think that is how, we improve our case velocity, because I'm in a contingency fee practice. And in contingency fee practices, cash flow is always the number one issue. Because I can have a reservoir, I can look at the overall value of my cases, and I can say, hey, look, we're owed $10 million in fees in the next 2 years. Great, that's awesome. It's better than being owed like zero. But I can go broke getting there, because it may be the last day of the 2 years and I've got, payroll expenses and all these things. So the faster you can move your cases, the less cash flow issues you're going to have. Like, velocity of case movement equals cash flow. And if you have cash now, look, we're living in an inflationary environment. $1 today is worth more than $1 tomorrow. And that dollar today is something that I can spend on a new employee, can spend on better marketing, can spend on coaching, can spend on going to a conference, and can do all these different things. So it's all about case velocity and efficiency, and that results in net profitability and growth.
What do you feel ultimately sets your firm apart from maybe a traditional PI firm today? Is it the automation? Is it the way you manage staff, or is it something else?
I think what sets us apart, look, a lot of PI lawyers are very incentivized to automate, of all kinds of lawyers. We do not bill by the hour. So the less hours we can work on something, the more we can make. We have to couple that within, like, you don't want to sell your cases short. We want to squeeze every dollar we can out of a case, because cost per case origination is a giant thing for us. I think what sets us apart is our culture. I think it's just like if you were to walk into our firm, like it's a different place. It's one where we really try to focus on the health and well-being of our team, the health and well-being of our clients. It's one where I think we really, as a team, live like a go-giver ethos. It's a team. Like it is supportive, and it is supportive of each other. It is the idea that we're working together that I think is very deep. And you sort of couple that with a belief like, hey, like we are a tech company that delivers legal services. Like that is what we are in 2022. And maybe that mindset coupled with that culture maybe makes us different.
Yeah, yeah.
And also like we are deeply committed to doing great trial work. Like we spend into our cases, we send our lawyers to the best workshops we can send them. We're going to take verdicts. We're doing all of those things. So there's a deep commitment to the craft at its core.
Yeah. We've talked about your past and a little bit about you. As we kind of shift into talking a little bit more about technology, I know that this is a bit of the theme today. Would you consider yourself technically inclined?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know, not a large percentage, but I spend lots and lots of hours on the back ends of all of our software as a service, trying to tweak, improve, automate, connect, find connections, find efficiencies, talk with our core vendors and say like, hey, what other automations do you have, or what other things can you do? Like, because to me, it's like spending money on software is like the best investment that I can make. Software doesn't need healthcare. Like software doesn't need a desk. Software works whether or not kids have to be picked up from practice. Like and so that's really important. And I don't say that to diminish the very important thing, because our belief is like you have to automate the mundane, because there is so much more important human work to be done that I have to free my team to do that human work. Give them the space. Like great leaders create space. I've got to create the space for them to do that work. And there's more than enough work, because that's where they're going to add the value. That's where they're going to identify the opportunity in a case to get the expert, because they're not overrun by mundane. That's where they're going to identify the problems with the defendant's pleadings or disclosure or whatever it is, because so much of the mundane, and I don't mean mundane in like in a bad way, because the mundane is incredibly important, but not getting bogged down by it. By having, even like in case status, like, I mean, you could basically come into my firm and like, it's like the templates are just so useful. Like, hey, this is the doctor for this problem. Click this button. Hey, client, go call this doctor. Tell the doctor this. Send. Like, you're not searching their website. You're not getting the phone number. You're not trying to figure out. My paralegals aren't trying to figure out which doctor I want somebody to be sent to for what problem. They know, and they can message it, and they're not having to search it.
Yeah. So software is a core piece. How does then that result in the way that, you mentioned culture, how does that result then in the way that your staff feels about working at your firm?
Like when you work at like law firms, to me are horrible places to work, mostly because like we have the highest rates of suicide, depression, alcoholism, like every bad thing. And to me, it's like, meditation rooms and yoga, like, forest bathing, like all these different things that one can do. Like it doesn't, they're great. Like I was stretching this morning and I'll meditate, I went for a walk, all fantastic things to do. But you know what? When you get back from that and you walk into chaos and you walk into fire after fire after fire, and it feels like the whole world is mad at you, like you can't meditate your way out of that. And so you have to have the systems in place. You have to have the training in place. You have to have the tools in place. So if we're talking about building healthier law firms, like I don't know how you bridge that gap without tech. There's no other way. I mean, I guess I could staff things to the moon, but then I'm going to collapse my firm on payroll. And And also you need the money. You need to free up the space. You need to be as lean as possible, so that way you can pay your people and pay them as much as possible if they're really good.
So we've talked a lot about software, of course, case status, but how many software solutions do you use?
All of them. No, I'm very reluctant to add to our tech stack. That is a thing to me, especially as the organization grows. Look, when it's just me playing around and I was a solo and I was like, oh, I'll try Clio, oh, I'll try Rocket Matter, I'll try this, right? It didn't matter. It was just me, right? And now there are 25 people working in our systems, and I've got to be very cognizant of how we're adding and to be adding very purposely. So my default right now is to not add new software. That is my default. And so I would say though, our core pieces of software, I also believe when you invest in software, you should invest in best-in-class software, because you are always going to be better off. I can't tell you how many companies in 10 years have come and gone. So there's this accounting software, and it's then there's QuickBooks. Well, get QuickBooks, because that's going to be I think the best play. So it's buying the best software. And then it's how do you think about your tech stack? What is the purpose of this software? Why am I adding this? What problems am I trying to solve, and what does it do? So, our tech stack is pretty basic. We have FileVine as our case management system. And I think in the heart of legal, the case management system has to be the sun. Where the planets orbit around it. And with API and integrations, it's getting more and more powerful to move more and more faster. So QuickBooks is Venus. And then our email app, we use Google Apps, that's Mars. And case status is Jupiter. So we use, our basic communication stack is we use RingCentral, we use QuickBooks, we use FileVine, we use LeadDocket for lead management, we use Slack for internal communication. Our lawyers, for some reason, like Microsoft Word, so we have a subscription to that, whatever the Microsoft product is. We have Adobe. We have Slack, which ties a lot of it together through Slack is our internal communications channel. Zoom. It's pretty basic. But I always think when you start building out your stack, you need really good, solid general base, and then you need very specific niche parts that fill a very specific need cleanly. It has to fit.
When you do decide to roll out new software, how do you address that with your staff, or what is maybe their response typically?
Yeah, I think the response for us starts at orientation of their as an employee, which is just look, this is what we do, and we show them how we operate, and we say, look, this isn't for everybody. So if you're not into if you're not able to handle change or tech, or you don't know how to right click, we're probably not the firm for you. And no, but we show, when we interview lawyers, we show them this is our process. This is how we do it. So I think it starts with setting that expectation. And then I tell them, I'm every single day we have to get better than we were yesterday. And sometimes that's going to mean improving software. Sometimes it's going to mean integrating different platforms of software. And so, they get it. And then I think for me, it's they know that I'm very into this, and they also know that I'm cautious with it. And so if I'm coming to them and saying this is a product we need to really consider, it has it's not disorienting to them. And and then obviously you have to invest them in the benefits. I always tell them, I'm look, if we're able to use a product like Case Status and cut down on inbound phone calls, well, guess what? That's money for your bonuses. Always tie the action to some reward for them. That's our ability to give you Fridays off in the summer randomly. That's our ability to go for team pedicures, or have Stephanie up for a retreat, which they all love. That's where we get that money. We're not Scrooge McDuck with pounds of money just to swim around. And so I think it's important for them to see the benefit, to tell them how it's going to make their lives easier, and also tell them that we wouldn't be adding software that we didn't think was best in class and that we didn't think was simple to use. Like those would be non-starters for my team.
How have consumer expectations shifted the way that you build your firm?
Yeah, like so many lawyers think the guy down the street is their competition or the woman down the street is their competition, and that's not true. Most people don't go around day to day interacting with lawyers. I mean, there are some, like in various walks of life or businesses, that is what they in fact do. But most people don't need a lawyer all that much. And so they have no real way of comparing you to my firm to Tyson's firm, or even Columbia. But like they have no way of knowing the difference, right? They can read reviews, and everybody's got good reviews, and everybody's got the same website, and everybody runs the same ads. And so what the consumer expectation is like, to me, consumer expectation is Amazon. Like it is like, if your law firm operates like as close to Amazon as Amazon operates, like you're gonna win. Like you're gonna get lots of clients, you're gonna get lots of calls, because at Amazon, like you go on, you click a button, you pay, the thing shows up at your door. If there's some problem, you message support and they say, oh, it's free, or just send it back and drop it off at Whole Foods. And it's like the asynchronous communication, the ability to look and say like, hey, my order is coming on this day. Great, I know where, oh, it was delivered. Which door was it delivered to? Like, why did the guy deliver it to my side door? Like all of these things are just there. I don't have to call, Jeff Bezos or Amazon customer support and say like, where's my package? And so and obviously legal is different. It's a lot different, to sell sponges and deliver them than it is to, do a real estate closing or something like that. But I think the consumer expectation is the same, which is clarity and communication. And also, look, I mean, like one of the things that clients experience on their journey, they hire a lawyer and they maybe their friend told them you were good, maybe they found you online, who knows? And they're looking like, am I in the right place? Did I hire the right lawyer? Am I in? And so if you can show them that this is all you do, you have been there before. And you know how you know you've been there? Because you're gonna get this app and it's going to be laid out for you, the process. All of the questions you can ever think of are going to be answered in this app. We will answer them for you as well. You can message us, but if you wanna go down your own little rabbit hole, I have video after video after video, I've got infographic after infographic, and you can work through it yourself. Then they're like, hey, I'm in the right place, and that trust and that confidence carries through all the way down through trial, where we're trying to talk to client and saying, don't take this offer, let's go to verdict, or conversely, like take this offer because they trust you. And if they don't trust you in the first 30 days, they're never going to trust you.
How has software played a part in driving client satisfaction?
It's critical because you can't, as you scale. Like I think about like how I built my business and like as an associate, and it was just always like I had very few clients, but it was being there for them and being accessible for them. And again, like the competition in legal is so low. Like lots of lawyers out there won't even answer phones or return calls or emails. So if you're doing like better than that, like you're gonna probably do okay. But it was the sense that like client service had to be at the core of legal service and had to be at the core of building my business. It was the best way and perhaps the only way for me to do it. Look, if you're out there and you have one client, the best way to get two is to do really well by that one client. And then if you've got two, the best way is to do really well by them, and you're going to have four. I mean, it just grows and grows and grows. But then you run into a problem where it's like you have to scale it. Right? So I can't handle all of our clients. And I probably at this point can't even handle any of our clients. But how do you scale that? And I think like that's where the tech and the automations and the skills and again, like the best way to lose confidence is like somebody says, what's going on with my case? Like I am always, at my firm, I was like, we have failed when we get that call or that message. Like we regardless of if the client you think is crazy, I'm like, we have failed if they do not know what's going on in their case. And we need to look at that as an opportunity to improve, and that should not happen. Like we should be at zero of those inbound. And it's like, well, how do you do that? Like, and again, if they're like, Well, if they have some question and you're like, they're going to get off the phone with you, and especially in my business, they're going to call the next lawyer. And it's like, nope, in this situation, you do this, and here's how you do it, and I'm going to help you. Boom.
Yeah. We talked previously about some experience at Enterprise. How did that experience really drive your perspective on client satisfaction?
Huge. It turns out like one of the luckiest things ever was like I ended up working there, which was just bizarre. I like one of the dumbest things I ever did was I graduated college early. Why? No, spend all 4 years, kid. Like, go back. No, that's good. That's good. Like, why get out in 3? But I did. And so, like, I was a history major, and I kind of wanted to go to law school, and I'm like, what do I do? And like, the only place hiring was Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and I was like, I guess, like, I'll make some money. Like, okay, this is something. At least it's a job. It's better than working at Walgreens where I was working, right? Like, it's something. And so I worked at Enterprise, and I learned so much from them. I mean, Enterprise, this is like 2000. I mean, Enterprise is like the largest car rental company in the world. Like, they have grown and grown and grown from a small shop in St. Louis, like, to this. And I want to say they're one of the largest privately held companies in the world as well. Like, they have not even gone public, even at this point at their scale. And I was like, well, what? In the training, it's like, yeah, they train you how to sell, they train you how to rent cars, they train you in their systems. But the number one thing that they stressed was customer service. And they had their Net Promoter Score, which they called their ESQI, E-S-Q-I, like Enterprise Satisfaction Quality Index. And like, so every day we had our like whiteboard, and they had like, 5 KPI, like, we didn't call them that, but they were like cars rented, average value of car, different other things, sales percentages on that damage waiver that everybody loves to buy, and then ESQI, and that was their Net Promoter Score. And I'm telling you, like, the number one thing that they would come down on branches for was a low Net Promoter Score, because they knew that managers could drive profits and diminish their Net Promoter Score, and they had determined as a core value of theirs and a core business belief that making customers happy was the best and fastest and cheapest way to grow their business, making their current clients happy. And that's why they came up with things like, hey, we're going to pick you up. That's why like they would go above and beyond. Like, they empowered me as like a first day management trainee to be like, okay, you're going to get an upgrade, and we're going to make it up to you that your car smelled like smoke or whatever it is. And so like that number always just resonated to me as like a key thing. And if you're going to grow a business, and you're not going to do it with like billboards and TV and all these other things that one can do it, like, it struck me as like a very thing that I could actually do even when I'm a solo, even when I can't measure it. And so that has always been a focus and always been a belief in my practice. And then in recent years, the ability to use software to quantify it has been incredible. We had used Podium before we switched over to Case Status, and it was Podium's feedback score. And so all it would do was sync with Filevine, and it would text out like, how are we doing at different phases, 1 to 10, right? And what we were learning through that was like, we had clients who were way happy with us that we didn't know. And these are people we could ask for reviews that we otherwise wouldn't have known loved us, right? Or conversely, like, we had clients who were like silently pissed off at us. And it's like, well, we thought that we, and so like we could respond, and we could say, somebody gave us a 3, like, Brittany, client happiness, you get on the phone with this person, we're gonna figure this out, and we're gonna work, and we're gonna drive that score up. That's gonna then translate to reviews. Reviews are gonna translate to business, and in personal injury, look, cost per case acquisition just keeps going up and up and up. Like, there are firms in national marketing outfits that will spend $4,000 a case to generate $2,000 a lead. I mean, it's crazy expensive when like the value of some of these cases is not that high. And also, if we're getting cases from lawyer referrals, like, we got to pay referral fees, 30, 40, 50% even sometimes, depending upon the case. And so the best and cheapest case comes from an existing client who says, hey, my brother was in a car accident. No referral fee, no advertising cost, and they trust us. Our intake process right now is so hot because it's like if we don't sign them up on the call, like they're gone. We need to sign them up on the first call. But if it's like, if somebody says, hey, Tyson sent me and I really work with Tyson, he said you're a good lawyer, like that is a much easier intake for us. We don't have to be as fast.
How have you established kind of a culture of client feedback across your firm?
I think one of the things that, I stole this from Stephanie and her team at Lawyerist, which was that, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. And really trying to culturally instill that when a client is giving us feedback, it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for us. And I do workshops on how to handle that feedback, which is like, look, most of the time it's not directed at you. Like the initial response is like a scared response. And it's like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Blaming themselves. And I'm like, oftentimes clients are upset about a whole host of things in their life. Some of them have personality disorders, like whatever it is, but like it's not about you. And where is the opportunity, if we look at this sort of dispassionately, for us to improve our systems? And maybe that there's not. Maybe just we need to call them and have listen to them go on for about 10 minutes and then move off and it's fine. But looking at that kind of feedback as real opportunities. And look, I tell my team, like every day we're in a fight for our survival as a business, and this is the way I know how to survive. And if you're talking about you want to become senior paralegal and you want to become a managing partner and you want to do this, well, that requires growth, and this is the way we're going to grow.
Now, how has your firm been impacted and grown, taking such a strong stance on Net Promoter Score and client feedback?
It's just crazy. It's just like. I look at leads even, and like leads up like 300% like year over year. Like that's a lot. Yeah. Without really doing more on the marketing side of thing, like that's a lot. So when you start looking at the data and the power of this, again, like companies like Enterprise and Apple and Delta, all of these things use Net Promoter Score. It's very ubiquitous. I don't know. I think it's the only path that I see for my team forward in a sustainable, healthy way.
Yeah. Do you take the traditional billboard or TV advertising route to get your name out there?
We get our name out. We don't. We get our name out there every other way possible. Right now, it's like everything is TikTok, but TikTok and Reels. But otherwise, it's like we're out there. Community events. We're out there. Google ads, Google local service ads, YouTube. We do run 5-second unskippable YouTube ads, which are a very good ROI for us in terms of brand building. We do email newsletters, thanks to Tyson's friend Jim Hacking, which I'm still out. I don't know, but I'm not as big a Jim as an email newsletter guy, but we do. And we send birthday cards every year. We message in case status birthday texts that go out and various things. So we try to really stay engaged with our core audience and make it easy for us to be found online. Yes, SEO and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. How do you feel the legal industry would change in general if they took a similar technology focus as you?
I think I really think like if you did this, it would have if other firms did this at this level, like it would have such a profound difference in the quality of life for the people who are delivering legal services, who are by and large now suffering needlessly. So I really tie it to a lot of mental health and wellness issues. When we show lawyers in our firm, when we say look, this is how organized we are, this is how systems oriented we are, this is how precise we are, we're able to attract talent because of it, because they know that means that their nights and weekends aren't going to be eaten up by stuff they should not be doing, or that we're going to be able to, when we say go to your kids' games, go take that vacation, we're going to be able to mean it because we're buying the bandwidth and the money in our systems by being that organized. So I think at the core of what we're talking about is really the health and well-being of those in legal, which I think is something that is very, very important.
How high do you think the barriers are for firms to be able to move forward with the technology focus.
There has never been a better time to be doing this. And, like I can talk to law firm owners and, in my local bar or whatever, and they'll say, oh, this is, they're completely wrong. And for lawyers who can see this opportunity, like there has never been a better time. Like for what, like imagine trying to develop a software like QuickBooks yourself. Like that would be inaccessible 20 years ago to, everybody, including like, one of the big 4 accounting firms. You could get a subscription for like $30 a month. Like that's awesome. Or even if you were just like, hey, I'm going to start my own practice tomorrow, and the only software I'm going to use is Google Apps for Business. They're calling it something else now, but like you get what I'm saying. Like $10 a month or something, and you get Word and email and Excel. Like that is unbelievably leveling, because that kind of office, that kind of suite alone, 20 years ago is like $20,000. I mean, it's just crazy. So the ability to access this stuff, the user interfaces are getting easier and easier and easier. The APIs are getting more and more open. The ability to connect is getting better and better and better. And when you hit ceilings, it's even easier to find vendors to connect these things and to do these things in a way that just builds on itself.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, thank you for the conversation. I'd like to open it up to the audience now. If you have questions, please put your hand up. And if you'll repeat the question just for the recording before you answer it, that'd be great.
Ryan, Brandon Dawson, you mentioned earlier when Andy was asking you about when you implement new technology, you say, what problem is this solving? With Case Status, what was the biggest problem that it was solving, and how has it really impacted your business?
So the question is when you implement new technology, you explain what problem it is you're solving. What problem was Case Status solving? And I mean, to me, the problem that Case Status was solving was asynchronous, 24/7 outbound communication without staffing, and it's really, when I look at that inbound question of what's going on in my case, like I actually think that is like, if I could go into law firms and consult with them, I would sit there and answer their phones and see how many of those calls they got a day. And I could tell you how successful they're going to be. I could tell you if they're going to get sued. I can tell you if their business is going to grow. And so the idea that we could lay out the process for them, that we could give them avenues to communicate with us, that we could, here's another one that was really important to me. I remember when I first started, one of the lawyers, other associate at the firm, said to me, like, one of the problems is clients get mad at our bills. Okay. And she's like, we do all this work, but they don't know that. They don't see that, and they just get the bill. And so, one of my big things is, especially early in a case, we load up outbound communication. I think we have at this point 95 different pieces of communication that go outbound in the first 60 days, okay? And one of the things that I always tell my team is stuff like, it doesn't matter to you, but I'm like, it matters to the client because they think we're gonna take their case and they're not gonna hear from us. And so it's like, okay, I would say, like, when we request a police report, I want you to text or email the client that we requested the police report. Well, now in Case Status, like, there's a little checkbox, check, and they get a ding that says, hey, they requested the police report. Like that is that trust building capability. And when you do that, you're not going to have clients, I apologize, you're not going to have, I thought I muted everything. You're not going to have clients who are firing you. Clients can walk out their firm with a case. And so you're automating that outbound checklist. I love that feature. And also, I talked to one of our area's like biggest PI chiropractors, and he was like, I was like, Steve, what do you see when your patients come in? He's like, they don't know who their lawyer is. He's like, they don't even know who their lawyer is, okay? And he's like, they haven't heard from their lawyer in forever, and they try to call sometimes and they get voicemail. Nobody ever calls them back. And so I say to myself, I'm like, okay, this guy is like the biggest PI chiro guy in my area. And I'm like, if this is my competition, I'm going to be better than them. Well, Well, that is a great and challenging question, which is like, how do you set a firm culture? How do you build a firm culture? And for me, that starts with defining what culture is. Okay, because is it this amorphous thing? Is it how people feel about things? And to me, culture is very simply like what we do. It's one thing to say we have a culture of excellence, but it's another thing to say like, are we getting excellent results every single time? And is that the expectation? So it starts with, I think, trying to define the values as clearly as possible. To me, it's like the critical things that we have done is really strengthened our hiring process over time through many mistakes or not many, but painful ones, and strengthened our hiring process and strengthened our employee orientation process, where we have, again, like it is automated, it is every single time, it is correct, the way we want it done and the way we want it communicated. And also just being like, look, this may not be the place for you. Like in being very upfront in like interviews and being very upfront into our job postings and say like, look, we're not for everybody. Like if you're one of these people who wants to just work by yourself and do your cases and not contribute to being on a team, like don't waste your time here. And then I think it is constant things like management is a whole thing as you scale, where it's like those one-on-ones are very important. I don't do them anymore. Our office admin does, who can identify, listen, do problems. We survey our employees monthly to try to identify opportunities for us to improve. And we give feedback, and not, our feedback process is like, we're going to sit beside you. We're going to try to work on this as an opportunity, because you have to build that trust. Like you have to build the trust that you're not going to snap at them and fire them. You have to measure, you have to tell them what's important, you have to celebrate those things that are important. I think that's it, but I think it starts with hiring, orientation, clear statement of values, and if you're CEO, I mean, it is like you are chief repeating officer. Like you just need to keep saying the same things over and over and over and over again, and hope that they stick.
Sure. One piggyback question on that, particularly it's kind of culturally related. Solo to where you are now, your role has changed. How did you begin deciding what not to do? How were you going, all right, all of this is mine. Okay, not anymore, that's yours, right? Like, how did you decide, what am I taking off my plate? Because you knew, hey, I needed more time for culture building. I need evaluation.
What happened with me was, that's a great question, which is like, how do you the question from Keith is like, how do you scale? Like from where you're like going from one to going to many, and like, how do you decide to do that? And I'm gonna say like, there's like sort of levels to this thing. And I had hit a level where my gross income was like so much. There's only so many hours I could work. There's only so many clients I could service. And that gross income level was actually not as high as it needed to be. And I was constantly working. And it constantly felt like the whole world was mad at me. And I wasn't even making like great money I would have been better off doing a whole host of things non-legal even. And that becomes like a very stressful point. And I mean, I got to a place where, I mean, I was just like, I'll never forget, like, it's like 2017, and it was in November, and I'm at the kitchen table, and my wife's like, our credit card declined. And I was like, uh-oh. And she's like, what's going on? And like, then it was like, oh my gosh, through the firm and through stuff, because it's all tied up personally, she's like, we have like $50,000 in credit card debt. She's like, I don't know if we're gonna be able to like pay for that snowblower you just bought. And she was like crying and sobbing. And that hurt because like I wasn't doing it right. Like that's a sign like it wasn't right. And I remember I went for a walk, and I was listening to Tyson's podcast, Maximum Lawyer. And on the podcast, I forget who the guest was, but it was like, he said it was this cold November night. I'm walking down my road, listening to my headphones, and I love walking winter nights. Like it's just wonderful. And and it said, like, you're never going to get ahead unless you leverage the time and talent of others. And I was like, man, like that is the message I needed to hear. So it got to a point where it was unsustainable for me. Like the path for me was like, I'm going to quit law. And so I was like, okay. And I'm like, what is it? And I just sort of like accepted that there were, like, I was like, what is it that I really love to do? It's like, okay, I love just doing the personal injury cases. So it was like, let's pare down my firm to just focusing on those. And then like, let's make decisions to take risks and hire people. And because I was like, okay, I looked at the money in the accounts and I was like, okay, I could afford to pay them for a month. And I'm like, so we have a month. And I was like, I've got this backlog of these cases, some of them that can be closed. And I'm like, I'm going to give them these cases to work because that will give me revenue and hopefully get more cases. And so it was making a very intentional decision of like, this is not how I'm going to live my life. And then it's making that decision over and over and over again as the firm grows, which is like, I am getting myself out of this thing. I'm getting myself out of litigation. I am getting myself out of pre-litigation. I'm getting myself out of intake and sort of like charting a path for me. And like, look, it's still not without pain and it's not without struggle and it's not easy. But I think it's like really acknowledging those moments and accepting that truth that was said to me on that podcast, which is like, you need to leverage the time and talent of others.
I think we have time for, one more question.
So you talked about getting buy-in from employees when it comes to systems and processes and softwares and all that. Can you talk about the other side of that when it comes to clients, whether it's case status or whatever it may be, getting them to buy into whatever software you might be using or whatever systems you might have, processes you have?
The question is like, well, how do you talk about buy-in to employees, but how do you get buy-in to clients? And I mean, the answer to that is like, I mean, our firm is client-centered, and if we will communicate with clients however it is that they want to be communicated with. If they want everything mailed to them and not emailed, we'll do it. We will do it. But those people are exceedingly rare. And, increasingly, I mean, like what we found when we adopted FileVine with like texting was like, they all just wanted to text. Like grandma wanted to text, the 16-year-old wanted to text. Nobody wanted to pick up the phone. So it was like, okay, like for us, it was like SMS capability was a very significant driver. And again, with like case status, when we implement that, we don't say that it's the exclusive tool that they have to use. We say that this is one way that many of our clients really love to interact with us. Many of our clients find it so useful. They can see the status, they can schedule, they can message, they can get information from us. And if you're not one of those clients, okay, we can email you. Like we can do these things. But and we send them with case status, like it's important to educate them. So in our welcome packet, you guys give us like a PDF or flyer, we send that right out to them. But I think it so aligns with customer expectation that the resistance on it, I mean, like, I don't know, you guys probably tell me my stats better than me, but like the amount of logins we get a month is insane. It's almost 100% adoption. It makes life easier for them. It adds value to their lives.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Let's give him a round of applause. All right, everyone, we appreciate you being here. There's more food. We'll be hanging out for a little bit, so feel free to stay, or if you have to run, that's okay. But we appreciate everyone's time, and thank you very much.